Just gonna do a small video about fascists and fascism, my thoughts, reflection, experience, and opinion of. Um, I don't know how to start, mainly because I'm just not a fascist, never really have. I'll start by saying I don't entirely understand fascist motives and fascist opinions and ideologies, and mainly because I don't understand why they have such a deep desire for nationalism when I don't know, globalism seems like a bigger thing, like a much bigger issue. If everyone around the globe had equal wages or equality in general, there'd be no need for nationalism, because there wouldn't be any nation better than another. Everyone would be equal, essentially, would solve all the problems of a necessitation for nationalism. Is kind of the way I feel. I also don't understand. I find a lot of nationalists and right wingers and people from nationalist parties seem to have this fixation that migrants are the problem and that they are destroying their culture. Now, there are a few reasons why I can understand them, and there are a few reasons why it's still bullshit. I can understand if you're from your home country and other people are getting employment in your home country, you'd be upset because you feel as though they're taking your jobs, but migrant workers aren't a significant proportion of the workforce, really. They also, depending on where they're from, so like here in Europe, some Europeans can come to the United Kingdom and claim benefits. So there's this whole thing of migrants coming over and claiming benefits. The reality is, most of them actually can't. If they're from South Africa or wherever, they probably can't. They might be able to if they're refugees, but they have to gain refugee status first. And it has to be quite a serious situation for someone to be a refugee. So the whole idea of them coming to claim welfare is bullshit. There's this idea that they are destroying the economy when the reality is, statistically, they actually give more to the economy than they take from the economy. They generally produce more wealth for a nation that takes on migrant workers than they take away. But one thing I can see is why they'd be upset at them taking jobs. Now, you can say all you want, migrant workers aren't taking jobs, but they actually are taking jobs. If the migrant workers weren't there, the jobs would be available for people who are nationals of that country. You can say what you want, you can say that's a fascist statement and I'm an evil bastard, but it's still true. If someone is taking a job that is available that isn't you, they have taken your job. If they are from your country, someone from your country has taken your job. If they are from abroad, someone from abroad has taken one of your jobs. So that is a legitimate thing. There are some things it doesn't apply to very skilled migrant workers. For example, doctors from abroad or major scientists. Now, there aren't many people who can take these kind of jobs. These are very qualified, heavily professional people. And it's not really a thing of they're stealing jobs from locals. It's more a thing of they're the only people qualified to actually take that job in this area for that pay. They were the people they were the most qualified person and the best solution. It was irrelevant whether they're migrant workers. So that's the whole migrant worker thing. Then there's the other thing of culture being destroyed by migrants. Now, I can understand where they're coming from. I understand why it upsets them. There's this idea that, Muslims are coming over from abroad to take over England and all these bloody black people with their jerk chicken or some shit. Something like that. But first of all, a lot of them were born in this country and actually are nationals of this country as well. Second of all, it's actually irrelevant, mainly because whether or not they intervene in our country's culture, whether or not they enter our culture, enter our country and change our culture, as it were. If you think that in 700 years' time with all the technological advances that humanity will probably face, and just the different social settings and all the different circumstances that it's going to face, that the culture will not be significantly different to what it is now, regardless of whether it's because of people from other cultures influencing it or not. You are severely deluded to think that England is going to remain the same for the next 700 years, regardless of, as I say, foreign intervention, is absolutely ridiculous. It's a completely demented belief. So the whole thing of culture is, culture does change over time. No level of delusionality is going to change that. The world does not stay the same, hence we age and we die. We don't all just stay toddlers forever. That's just not reality. Unless you die as a toddler, then, you're a toddler forever. But that's just not reality. Culture does change over time. That's not something that you can change by getting rid of foreign people. You can't put a country into stalemate by getting rid of foreigners. That's a ridiculous claim. I understand people who are nationalistic. A lot of them like their country. A lot of them are proud to be from the country, and I can rep that. I can understand that. I can agree with that. In fact, I'm proud to be from the United Kingdom. Whether we've had a bad history or not, I'm still proud to be from where I'm from. It's a good place to me. It's been good. It's been a nice place to live. So I can understand. I can understand that nationalistic pride. Another thing that I get from them that I do understand, but I can't see it needing to be a thing, is the idea of total war and total mass mobilization of people. Making all civilians combatants. The whole idea of martial law in times of warfare in order to prepare people to fight against other nations is a horrible ideology. It's a horrible thing to happen. But I can actually see where it could have its place if, for example, 3 or 4 of our European neighbours decided to go to war with us. Would we be prepared? The average citizen is not at all military minded. It's not at all a combatant. They are all just, regular civilians, civvy street people. So I can see where fascism, I don't like to say it, but I can see where it would be helpful in some ways to armed conflicts. I can't really see it being helpful to any other cause, but if there was a massive armed conflict going on and there were people trying to take the United Kingdom, depending on whether I'm okay with them taking the country or not, I may be not okay with a fascist government, but understanding of a fascist setup, like it could be necessary to force people to take up arms to fight off invaders, essentially. I do understand why dictatorships can be useful. I don't agree with them personally, and I hope it never happens, but I can see how they can have a place, essentially. They have an idea of political violence and war and imperialism as a way of achieving, national strength, essentially. I don't like the idea, but it's kind of true. I mean, for example, if I set up a country that oppressed 50 other countries and took on all their resources through political violence and war, my country's economy, where I'm sending all these resources to and gaining the wealth of 50 other countries, would be significantly stronger than the other nations, because we have all their motherfucking resources to one country. So it does make sense. It's just a horrible principle. I prefer the principle of cooperation rather than the principle of absolute domination. I mean, I'm into dominating people myself, but only if they're into it as well. I'm not into, essentially what is rape in a way. It's seizing power. Like, you don't ask them for their consent. You don't ask them if you can shoot them and take their shit. You just do it. So this is where I see faults in fascism, not in terms of militaristic and logical conclusions. It makes sense to be fascist if you don't give a fuck about human beings and essentially want to be better than everyone else. It totally makes sense to be fascist. But in terms of morality and ethics, it's just not. It's not nice. It's just not a nice ideology. I find a lot of fascists, the younger ones, tend to just be angry young people who have nowhere else to take their anger out. Similarly to a lot of other people in other forms of ideologies, the young ones there are just angry people who've had their anger directed by some kind of ideology. And I found that they're sort of mainly the geezers who are in football clubs type thing, or really really enjoyed school assemblies and such. They kind of tend to be those kind of people, and the kind of people who grew up with racist parents and such, and like like old churches and such, and kind of traditional people seem to be nationalists. They seem to be traditionalists, and in general, fascists are comprised of these kinds of people. I'm not saying they're all like that. That would be wrong. In fact, I don't think the majority of them actually are fascist. In fact, I don't think a lot of nationalists are fascists, to be honest. There's a difference between national pride and radical nationalism. Like, as I said, being proud of where you're from is different to wanting where you're from to dominate the rest of the world. Completely separate thought path there. But yeah, I find them to be essentially young people who are just angry and have misdirected hatred, have some belief that everyone who's not a traditionalist is evil, or anything outside of national syndication is wrong, basically. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say with fascism is, in terms of morality, it's a horrible ideology, and it's not really necessary. As I say, global cooperation makes more sense. It makes more sense for everyone around the globe to mutually strengthen each other, mutually hold each other's hands, and try and get the entire world's average living standards up, and try and make everyone's living standards higher, rather than have a country that has much higher living standards but has made 30 to 40 other countries have extremely severe living standards and warfare among their own people. To me, this is not a fair belief. It's a militaristic and horrible ideology. In terms of if you're a selfish bastard and you just want to soak up the sun and don't care how many people get hurt or tortured, yeah, go ahead and be fascist. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, honestly, it's a good ideology for you. If you can become a fascist dictator, you'll probably be quite happy. So yeah, that concludes my thoughts, opinions and reflections on fascism. I hope you enjoyed.